Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 20s podcast. This is a podcast for the girls in their 20s who are wanting to live life to the fullest, and we are welcoming you to the official wedding-themed podcast. Da-da-da-da. This is our wedding episode, and we're excited about this one for several reasons. One is because we know there's a lot of girls in their 20s who are getting married or who have friends who are getting married or who have questions about weddings. That we know to be true. But the second part of it is Meg and I actually have been in the wedding industry now for 3 or 4 years. And we've been wedding planners, wedding coordinators, wedding designers, and we're now actually helping a business owner open a wedding venue. And so we actually know a thing or two about planning weddings. And so we thought, let's help the girlies in their 20s who have questions about weddings. And so that is our plan today.
Yeah, because we were saying in this season of life, in our 20s, if you're not getting married, everybody, it can feel like around you is getting married. Like there's just so many weddings, whether it's family weddings or friend weddings. And it's just a huge part of the culture of being in our 20s is weddings and wedding season. And there's just so much that goes into it.
Yeah. So we're going to go through all kinds of different things today. We're going to go through our hot takes on the wedding industry in general, which we do have several of them. We're going to kind of process through just our experience and what we've learned along the way. We're going to give you tips on wedding planning as wedding planners, and Meg's actually planning her wedding right now. So she is in it and she knows all the things from being a bride to being a wedding planner. We're going to be answering questions that you guys have sent in. We have a lot that we're covering today, a lot of ground. So we're going to dive right on into it and waste no more time. So let's process through just the wedding industry in general, Meg. What have you learned over the last 4 years about the wedding industry? Give us some thoughts.
The wedding industry is a wild world. I feel like being in the Midwest, it's a little bit tamer than the rest of the country.
I would say significantly tamer.
But
it's still crazy.
We went to this thing called the Wedding MBA a year and a half ago.
In Vegas.
Megan
Liv's first trip to Vegas.
Spooky.
The food was good, though.
Oh, it's so overstimulated.
It was spooky.
But just learning about the industry on a grander scale from people all over the world, it is just a massive industry. So I think that's something that we've even learned over the years is the fact that it is an industry, which means people are trying to sell you something and it's like a huge money maker. And acknowledging that as a bride and someone like who's planning a wedding or friends in the wedding, I think is so important. Otherwise you can just get sucked right into it without even knowing.
Totally. Honestly, I feel like Meg and I often have very neutral, viewpoints on things where there's nothing inherently wrong about the industry and the fact that it's a service industry and the people's careers in the industry is to serve people. And a lot of people in our culture in America have a societal norm for what weddings are. But also I think what's interesting is just the huge diversity of our society and what people's needs are for their weddings, where it can range from obviously multi-million-dollar weddings to people who have only a few $1,000s to spend on their day. And so I think what happens though is we see these pictures of what weddings are supposed to look like on Pinterest, and it's really confusing for brides or people planning their wedding when what they see on Pinterest actually ends up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're like, shoot.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many like unrealistic expectations 100%. When it comes to the industry, and you just have no idea till you're in it. And so I've had friends before that like send their Pinterest board to a florist and the quote they get back is $25,000.
And that's like not even that crazy for some of these Pinterest photos. Like I did wedding floral for a long time, and so I've seen like what it costs to do floral, how much florals cost, and oftentimes our Pinterest photos are like $40,000 florals, $50,000 florals. And so
Which makes my heart hurt for the girlies because I think a lot of us had Pinterest boards since like middle school, high school, planning your wedding, dreaming about it. You think that these like beautiful tents and the flowers and the lights and all the different things is like realistic until you get quotes back and you're like, oh boy, this is not even feasible. And not that that's wrong if you can afford it, because there's nothing wrong with it at all. But I think what we see here in the Midwest is it's not
average wedding.
Yeah, realistic for most of the girlies here or around us, and that can be hard.
Yeah. Fun fact, guys, the average wedding in America is $30,000. That's the average, which honestly, Meg and I were kind of both shocked that it was that low, because most people's weddings are over, I shouldn't say most people, but it's really easy to spend $30,000 on a wedding. Like, you don't even have to try. You really just like bat an eye, get your photographer, a venue, a florist, you know, some basic decor and some food in your bar bill, and you've exceeded that in a traditional setting very easily. But it is crazy that, you know, it's an expensive thing, and it can be very overwhelming because of that, because money oftentimes is a very stressful thing. And when planning a wedding, it should be about the marriage itself and the celebration itself, but when there's such like money on the line for people, it oftentimes can bring a ton of stress, a ton of anxiety, different family dynamics, just a lot of pressure. And so we've seen so much just in our past few years, and so we're really hoping that this is just an opportunity to like peel back the curtain, get some of our honest thoughts, and kind of just bring some, I don't know, hopefully alleviate some stress and pressure from everybody.
For sure. And we were saying we could talk about this for hours, and so we might end up having to do a part 2 or get into some more specifics at some point, but hopefully this is just a good general overview of the industry, the wedding world, weddings, that sort of thing. And so I feel like that segues us well into some of our hot takes.
Okay, Meg, so we're going to talk about a few wedding hot takes. We're not going to get into all of our hot takes, but we're going to hit on 2 of the biggest ones that we think are probably the most talked about amongst you all. And so our first hot take is, should weddings really cost this much? So we said the average price of wedding is about $30,000 in the US. Meg, tell me your hot take about the costs of weddings.
Oh, I feel like I have so many thoughts with this.
I feel like we could talk about this exact thing for an hour.
I know. Gosh, I think it's crazy. Like, it is crazy. But then also when you think about the reality of what it takes to host 200 people well and serve them well, it's like, oh, I can see how it can add up that fast. We're just feeding that many people. Costs a ton of in in just the price of life right now. And so that sort of thing isn't that shocking to me.
Totally. I feel like even before we dive in on this hot take, I think it's important to just say, like, imagine having, I bet most people who are listening to this podcast have had a graduation party before. Like, you had all your family and friends come over to your family's house, and you had a potluck, and you guys know how difficult and how much stress even and how much preparation it takes to plan a graduation party. Basically, a wedding is like that on steroids. There's probably more people traditionally. It's really, weddings, it's just a big party, and parties have costs. But like, I think you should just talk about, can you like, we haven't talked about this. Would you mind like peeling back the curtain a little bit about just like, you're going to have a really beautiful wedding. Meg is having like a super beautiful wedding at a venue, which, at a venue, and you're having what, 200 guests? And I hope we can cut this out, but it's like, you're doing like a very modest meal, you would say, like something that's going to feed people. They're going to be full, but it's not like the bougiest, you know, the best of the best meal. It's just going to be good food that's warm and delicious. It's a good old barbecue. How much are you paying for food per person?
Oh gosh, I don't know the per person number, but we're doing a buffet. We're doing barbecue. It's honestly the cheapest we could find in our area for wedding food that tastes good, has good reviews, that sort of thing. And I think it's going to end up being like close to 6,000 just for food for 180 people.
Yeah.
And that's just a buffet. And so plated meals usually end up being like 30 to 50 per person.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy. But then you're thinking about like them serving the food and preparing it. It takes so much work.
And we know lots of caterers like personally, and it is insane the amount of work that they have to go through.
It comes out to being like 16 or
6,000 divided by 180
is 33. 180. Maybe it's a little less than that. Well, okay, I'll give you this little tip.
Okay.
On top of that is a 10%. So what the cost of the food is, I think was about 16 to 18 per person. And then it's a 10% fee for our venue to bring in a caterer, and then a 20% gratuity fee.
Wow, yeah.
So that knocks it up to like the 6,000 mark, I think, or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so that's another part about weddings is the base cost for things usually doesn't include tax
gratuity
or tips. And because it's a service industry, tips are required even on the big ticket items.
Yeah, totally. No, it's just like super interesting because it's like, should weddings really cost that much? And I think you just prove a good point where for some people, like if your desire is to have 200 people there and you're wanting to just serve them well and give them some really yummy warm food with good reviews, nothing crazy, it's really easy just to immediately drop $6,000.
Because it's like, if you think about it, it's like taking out 200 of your friends to a restaurant.
Yeah.
You would normally pay $30 to $40 per person's meal, which is kind of what you're doing at a wedding in a sense. And so but when you hear the numbers, it's
frightening.
It kind of makes you a little sick to your stomach.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a huge thing that me and my fiance had to just like pray through and wrestle through at the start of the wedding planning season, was how much are we okay with spending and actually thinking through like our why first.
That's so good.
Why are we having a wedding? What do we want it to look like? What do we want it to feel like? What do we want our guests to experience? How do we want to serve them well? And I think just determining our values at first then allowed us a ton of freedom and peace to make decisions that actually align with those instead of what we just like thought we should do.
Yeah.
And so that has brought way more peace, because it can start to just feel like so anxiety provoking of like, oh gosh, like this is just a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it also is such a beautiful, important thing to celebrate, and you just kind of have to wrestle with it. But
it's really good. I think what you bring up about, I think how do we answer like, should weddings really cost that much? I think it is so important to determine your why, because I do think a lot of couples do spend way more money than they're comfortable with, than what fits even what they desire for their date, where I think we're kind of we can oftentimes be funneled into like a cookie cutter of, I have to invite 150, 180 people, and I have to eat this traditional sit-down meal, and I need to have this ceremony at this time, and this has to be my timeline, when that might actually not be the vision that that couple even receives, where I think it's beautiful that you and Nathan have been able to like vision out, this is what we're desiring, this is, have clear vision. But I would say that for some people, I don't know if they should be spending as much money on weddings as they do, and they just maybe sometimes do it because they feel like they have to, when that's actually not. I don't know. I guess like one of my thoughts about should weddings cost that much is, if a wedding's going to put you in a debt, then it shouldn't cost that much. So that, like, obviously you want to serve people really well and love your guests well, because oftentimes they're traveling and they like want to, you want to serve them well, but maybe you're not in a season of life where you can afford a traditional $30,000 wedding, or even a $20,000, $15,000 wedding, and that's okay. Yeah, like it's okay that is not what you can do. And so I think with that, it's important to not spend more than
you have the means.
The means to, because it's not worth the stress and the anxiety. just to host a celebration. And so I would recommend to those people, think outside the box and get really creative. Maybe it isn't having a full meal. Maybe it's having a backyard wedding and kind of like treating it almost like a graduation party where you're like potluck styling and you're setting up tables in your backyard. Or you purchase an Airbnb for the weekend and not your traditional venue. Doing things that are out of the box to fit within your means, I think, is probably one of the most important things you can do. And I don't think many people or many wedding planners are going to give you the permission to release yourself from like the pressure of doing that if that's not within your means.
Yeah.
So
for sure. I feel like actually knowing what you can afford and setting a budget and determining your values at the beginning of the process is the easiest way to set yourself up to actually enjoy the process and not have it be this super stressful, overwhelming, anxiety provoking thing.
Yeah, totally. That's so good. And I think our other hot take maybe that we can talk about is, do we think that big traditional weddings are the way to go or small celebrations, which I feel like we've kind of talked about a little bit. But I think that's kind of our other
Do you have
hot
some initial thoughts?
I guess once again, I love what you're talking about of like know your why.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone should feel pressured into doing anything. And I know it's like been more traditional to have larger weddings. I think that's just kind of generationally how it's gone. But I think one of the best ways you can, if you're someone who values connection with people, like deep connection, or you're someone who values talking to every single person on your wedding day and connecting with them and like so on and so forth. So I think we're just getting back to is know your why. For some people, I think they probably don't give themselves permission to have small weddings when that actually would probably be the most peaceful thing for them. And I don't know. I think that's sometimes too bad. I thought of an idea the other day.
Yeah.
I've been thinking of so many random wedding ideas because we've been talking about weddings and I think we've just been so challenged in our views towards them. Where I think if you're somebody who maybe like doesn't have a budget for a traditional wedding, something that I thought of was doing one day having a small wedding with a small group of people. Maybe it's just your immediate family and your like bridal party. Going out to dinner with them, eating a nice dinner with them, like doing a small ceremony. And then just on like another day in the summer, maybe it's like renting out a park pavilion and just having a big potluck with all your friends and family. And doing it that way where you still are able to be really present on your wedding day, celebrate with like the people that really should be there. And then also opening it up to a larger group of people, but doing it within means that work for you. And so there's just so many ways around, like maybe it's both. Maybe it's a small gathering and a large gathering. But I think we have to get a little bit creative and really reflect on why are we doing what we're doing, if that makes sense.
For sure. No, that's so good. Yeah, and I think giving yourself permission at the beginning of the process to just take a second.
So good.
Because there can be so much pressure to quick make a decisions because it can feel like this scarcity mindset within the industry when it comes to venues because they book out sometimes a year or 2 years in advance, which is true. But at the same time, an extra week or 2 weeks to give yourself genuine space to process the fact that you just got engaged and then to really determine your budget, your values, your ideal day, vision it out before you start making these massive decisions will just bless you immensely in the rest of your engagement season.
And
for sure.
Fear and scarcity. And honestly, we just believe everything's so divine. The Lord's got you.
I mean, my goodness. The wedding venue.
Yeah. Meg's wedding venue story is kind of crazy where it was kind of like there was literally like no dates open, but she really wanted to be at that venue. But she felt like the Lord was just like, just pause and wait.
Yeah.
And he opened up the exact date she wanted.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It is true. Like working in weddings, we do know that things book out really easy. They're not lying to you when they're saying, you got to book soon. But at the same time, it's the most important thing you can cultivate during that time is just peace. And not making any decision out of fear is no way to make a decision. So,
no, that's good.
Yeah. We got plenty of hot takes.
Yeah.
But
I think we'll just leave it there for now.
We'll leave it there. Yeah. So we're actually going to go into a game. It's called Who's More Likely, and we have some fun little prompts. And we're going to point, we're not going to look at each other, but we're going to point to who we think is more likely to do whatever. The prompt says. So, okay.
Are you going to read them?
I'll read them, but then we're going to look at the camera and we're going to count to 3, and then we'll close our eyes. So don't do it yet. So the first one is, who is more likely to cry through the entire ceremony? Okay, wait. Before we answer this one, as a bride or should we say a bride? Like as a
Yeah, let's say as a bride.
We'll pretend we're brides. Who's more likely to cry through the entire ceremony? Okay, close our eyes. 3, 2, 1.
We're just pointing at each other.
I don't know if I would cry.
I know. I don't know if I would either. I feel like usually in moments like this, I even just like think of the proposal. I was laughing the whole time because I was just so excited and happy that I cried for like a second. And so I don't know if I'll cry.
Yeah.
But maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like I was probably just thinking of myself on that one where I'm like, I don't think I would cry, so I'm going to put my finger at Meg. I don't know.
It's hard to tell. I feel like it's such an emotionally charged moment we could imagine. We obviously haven't experienced it yet, but it feels so like emotionally charged that you really don't know how you're going to react.
And what's interesting is I feel like I always cry when I'm watching someone get married. But if I'm like a bridesmaid, I don't know if it's like like I just don't cry. Like I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe because there's so much going on that I feel like I can't even process what's happening. So I think that's why I was like, as a bride, I feel like I'm not gonna cry. But
I would agree with that. As a wedding coordinator, I cry at every wedding I do, but I didn't cry at my sister's wedding. I haven't cried at any of my best friends' weddings, and so I don't know what that's about.
I don't know what that's about either. Interesting. Okay, next one. Who's more likely to trip while walking down the aisle? Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Wait, we both said ourselves.
You said you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you're not going to trip.
Oh, okay. The only reason I said me is because I'll be walking by myself.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't have anybody to catch me.
Oh, that's super valid.
If I trip. So
I think you'll be fine. I feel like you have little ballet flats, but you're setting yourself up for success in that department.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think. Oh, so I think maybe I said that for myself. So my sister's wedding is next week. I'm the maid of honor in her wedding with my little sister. And I have a pretty big dress. Like, it's kind of like, it's not like a ball gown, but it's a very full dress, very heavy. And I'm wearing these tiny little kitten heels I got off Amazon. And I already trip in them already.
Yeah.
And there's a potential that if my little nephew Wade doesn't make it down the aisle, I have to carry him, and I'm walking with my little sister, so I'm not holding on to a man. Like, it's me and my little sister walking together, and then
she's an adult.
What? Oh, yes, my little sister is 20 years old, so yeah, she's an adult, but like, it's not like I can like lean on her.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think I'm a little paranoid about tripping next week.
It's fair game, or of who could.
Anyways,
we're both pretty clumsy.
Regardless, I'm the type of person if I trip, we'll recover. It'll be fine.
I've like genuinely thought through of like, if I tripped, could I somersault out of it?
That would be crazy, Meg.
I don't
Loki,
think so.
If you were to do that, I would, whatever you want, I will buy it for you. Like, I would, like, that is so iconic.
Yeah. I don't think I could, but that's like in my head. I'm like, if I start falling, I'm gonna somersault.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That would be so slay. Okay, this one's really easy.
This one's easy.
Who's more likely to have a flash mob at their wedding?
Liv.
Guys, I just wish my entire life was a music video. Low-key, I don't know why I have this like weird desire to be in a flash mob in my life. Like, it's like real. Like, probably it's like an intrusive thought I have once a month where I'm like, let's plan a flash mob. I've been in one. Have you been in a flash mob, Annie?
No way.
That's my dream.
In elementary school. That's
Shut
iconic.
up. That's so cool. Okay, there's one of the most cringy things ever to me. Like, my dream engagement would be to like be by nobody and like have no one witness it, and have it just be really quiet and like, yeah, no one around. But I either want that or I want a full-blown flash mob with 300 people. There's really no in between.
Yeah, this is something you have talked about extensively for a few years now.
I don't know why. I just want one or the other.
One day it's going to have to happen in some shape or form.
Shape or capacity. Okay. Irish exit their own wedding.
Ooh.
All right. I don't know what to say. 3, 2, 1.
Me.
Yeah.
I think me. Yeah. I love people, but also get really overwhelmed by people. And so I can see myself just being like, time to go. Peace out. No one knows.
Yeah.
We left.
I feel like it's more so not even like a you thing as much as like I feel like I'm the type of person that like I make plans with everybody before I leave. Like seeing them. Like it takes me a long time to leave places because I accidentally like end up planning, like committing to like hanging out with them. And I feel like my wedding would be like probably similar. I'd probably tell like, that's why I probably should have a small wedding someday, Lord willing, because I'd probably just end up committing to 200 people for plans afterwards.
That's so valid. That's so fair.
Okay. And our last one. Insist on wedding karaoke and going way too hard. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Live.
That sounds really fun. I actually really love the idea of doing something at your wedding that's just a bit like fun, other than just dancing. I have heard people doing wedding karaoke and they say it's a party.
I'm sure it's a blast.
I definitely value like the fun part of the wedding. Like I love fun things. So like the thought of doing something really fun and goofy to just like engage people sounds way too much fun. So okay, that was kind of fun.
It was. That's good.
So that is our little game segment, and now we actually are going to dive into some questions that you all asked us on Instagram. So we're going to try to get through as many as possible. I think we should try to like be really rapid with you so we can hit most of them. Okay, so the first one is how to be a bridesmaid and celebrate/support well. How many times have we been bridesmaids? I've been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I've been 6 times. And I'm a maid of honor in 2 weddings within 3 months. One being Megan's and one being my sister. So I feel like I'm turning into, after these 2 weddings, I think I can officially give myself a professional bridesmaid.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you answer this one to start.
Okay. I think how to be a bridesmaid and support well. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect at it. Because like even like my sister, she's all the way in Milwaukee, and if she's listening to this, sometimes I feel bad because I'm live 3 hours away from you, and I wish I could support you more tangibly, like in person, but sometimes life doesn't allow you to do that. I think it's just leaning into your relationship with whoever, like, so like for me being like best friends with Meg and being my sister's sister, just really thinking about what they need and really leaning into the relationship and just trying to serve them well with like what I know they need during that time. So I think I try to really advocate for like what I know you want. I mean, we've talked about your wedding for years. And so I think when it comes to like the bachelorette party and even just like the wedding in general, like I feel like the most important thing I can do is just like serve you and my sister well based off of what I know that they want, because ultimately I don't want to be like this, but if you're the maid of honor, you know, or a bridesmaid, you know these people so well and you know what they need, you know what their stressors are, and I think I'm just trying to always be advocating for and just like supporting well. So I think the first thing to just support well is just be really conscious of their needs, and I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's
be protective of that even.
Yeah, something you've done really well, because I think when you are in the seat of planning the wedding and making a ton of decisions, depending on your personality, it can get overwhelming, or you can even start to get kind of confused or overwhelmed of like, what do I want how is this going to even be like reflective well of like me and my fiance, or what decisions can I make? And so I feel like in this whole process, you've kind of been like guardrails of, you've heard me over the last few years describe my ideal day or dream day or my values in the day, and can just keep pointing me back to that, even in making tiny decisions, so that it is like most reflective of us and our values, which is super helpful to have outside voices encouraging you in that and reminding you of it, because it can just get overwhelming by the sheer amount of options that there are out there and decisions that you are making.
Totally.
So I feel like you've done that really well, and I've felt very supported by you in that, because it can be a lot. So.
Yeah, it can be a lot. And I think it's important too. Everyone's different. So like I'm the type of person, so like obviously I've planned weddings, and so I know the things that I can help guard Meg from. And I'm also a very decisive person.
Yeah.
I don't get decision fatigue. So I know that I can help Meg and my sister by helping them make decisions and being support for them in that. And I definitely am trying to like lean into my own strengths during this time, where there's you as a bridesmaid may be just very different than me. Maybe you're someone who is like just like gives tons of words of affirmation and encouragement. Like lean into that.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a ridiculous planner. Like you're so good at planning. Use your gifts to help whoever you're supporting, because ultimately that's your job, is to just support and love and surround and encourage. And so I think just like lean into what your God-given gifts are, and that's half of it. So
that's really good.
So okay, that's our first question. We'll quickly touch on this. This is kind of a bounce off. As a maid of honor, how do you delegate share responsibilities? So I actually feel like I'll answer this one too, because this has been my season. So I think traditionally there's a lot of responsibility on the maid of honor to do everything, which obviously you're the leader. So you're the one who needs to make sure that like all the other bridesmaids and wedding party is following along with like maybe the bridal shower, bachelorette, so on and so forth. But once again, I think everyone oftentimes wants to help and be a part of it. So like when it comes to a bachelorette party, if you have a really fun friend who loves making games, allow them to come up with the games. I know when it came to Meg's bachelorette, I was just like, I'm not the game master, but I know who is. And there's some friends who are like really great cooks, and they like want to help and they want to cook. Like when they ask you like, how can I help? Actually
give them a task.
And so I tried to just like be really aware of everyone's gifts, and when they came to the table and said that they wanted to help, just like allowing them to help. And so really your job is to just be a good leader and a good organizer, and giving people space to even serve and love you, because that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
So
that's so good.
Just when people ask for help, be okay with taking it.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
I guess that's like share the responsibility and just be organized.
Yeah.
So, okay, next question. Talking about marriage, preparing for it, involving God, etc.
That's good. I feel like this could be
actually a whole thing.
This could be a whole thing. I think for me, at least, in this season of preparing for a wedding and marriage, it's been helpful to like, actually this book that I was just reading this last week was talking about how a wedding is like a decorated doorway where the house is your marriage, but the wedding is like the doorway to like enter into marriage. And it's like
cool.
The super beautiful thing that you decorate and you make look beautiful, and you get to enjoy it and you get to walk through it and like pause before you like actually enter into the house, but it's not the house itself.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. Dang.
That I feel like has been a good analogy and helpful even in this season, of remembering that the wedding isn't the end in itself, and like marriage is the thing that we're preparing for, and that's like the whole purpose of the day. And so I think actually giving yourself space in the midst of planning and preparing for the wedding day to actually like prepare your heart for marriage and think about, what is marriage? What are my beliefs surrounding marriage? How do I want to enter into marriage? Because it's the biggest commitment that you'll ever make. And so there is just so much that you can do to like actually prepare your heart for the step into it, and acknowledging that the house is so much more important than the doorway. So to not get too distracted by it.
Yeah, but the doorway can still be pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like both things can
Yeah,
exist.
at the
That's
same
really
time.
good. I think the other thing that I'm thinking of is just not making your wedding your God and like keeping God as God of like during the wedding season. I haven't walked through it personally, but I've walked with a lot of people who have walked through it. And it's just really important to like not make your wedding your entire identity and like the
Yeah.
only thing that consumes your life, where ultimately I think if you're being rooted in just truth and peace and God, I think that also allows for conversations about God and involving God to just
sure.
flow. Whenever we get that order switched up, like putting the wedding as like the thing that brings us peace and fulfillment, and like when we get that out of order, that's when everything goes
Yeah. And that's when you put too much pressure
Yeah.
on the day to like meet and satisfy
Ooh,
this
I hurt for
like
people.
deep desire in your heart. And then if something goes wrong, it's like the biggest
Yeah.
like catastrophe and letdown. And
Or you get depressed
you
when
get
it's
depressed
done.
when it's done.
Oh, because you're no longer a bride. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, dang.
Because I think it's like not making your wedding a God and also not making yourself a God
so good.
during the wedding process.
It kinda
Because
hurts. I feel so bad.
it does, but I think
Yeah.
there is this temptation as a bride to like make this season all about you, and it's like
Talk about it, queen.
people's purpose to serve you and to look at you and celebrate you, and it's like this actually isn't about you.
Ooh, that
And
hurts so bad. I feel
you can see it
Yeah,
in people
it's
when
so
they
good.
like when it is this like self-glorifying
Yeah.
season, and it's such an easy like
Yeah.
temptation and thing to be on guard to, but it just is not going to fulfill you to like make your day a God or put your hope in it or in yourself either, because it just
Yeah.
feels gross.
The most beautiful human beings in life are those who see others. And I feel like that's probably the best beauty tip for brides is just to meditate on the Lord, meditate on his goodness, and keep him at the center. And that bridal glow will be extra glowy.
Yeah, for
'Cause,
sure.
Yeah, it's a pretty anxious place to be so consumed with yourself.
Yeah.
Or like I know for myself, when I'm thinking about myself so much, I literally feel like garbage. And so obviously we want to be these beautiful brides too and come to the table. Like you should like prepare yourself for that and take care of yourself and so on and so forth. But I think when we're so consumed with ourselves, it's just going to lead to so much anxiety and stress that you don't need to carry.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
I just like there needs to be permission to the brides to just like let the load off of
Yeah.
like all the expectation that you're putting on yourself and the expectation that other people may be putting on you too. And so
Yeah.
keep your eyes fixed on the heavenlies. And
Amen.
I don't know, that's tough. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Like I sit from a place of like I haven't been there
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's not easy. And so yeah, it's good. Okay, DIY florals. Okay, I'm gonna talk about this
Yeah,
one.
you go.
So I did florals for 3-4 years, and this is my thoughts on DIY florals. I don't even know what to say. Florals are so much work, and I would never discourage someone. If you really want to do it, go ahead, be my guest. But you actually need to know what you're getting yourself into, because even if you do the simplest thing, it's still a lot of work. And it's a huge, huge task. And so you could just be doing the smallest bouquets and it's still going to take a huge chunk of your time, and the preparation for it is actually insane. I would never tell you to not do it. Wow, that's the
garbage
truck.
How are we out of time? Okay.
Yes, I would never fully discourage you and tell you not to do it, but I also will be realistic with you and tell you that it is not a quick and easy thing. And so, but florals are a ton of money, like if you go and get them done. And honestly, it makes sense why they're a ton of money. The wholesale on them is actually really expensive, and then the service to like actually do them, I don't even think they're that outrageously priced. I just think that probably shifting your expectations. If you're trying to like save money and that's why you want to DIY them, I would just start shifting your expectations to just thinking of something so much more simple, where it's like, maybe if you're going to do your flowers, don't do like a flower bouquet that has like 20 different flowers in it. Maybe just do like a few little flowers, keep it simple, don't go crazy with it, but it's a ton of work.
It takes a full day. Like, I've watched Liv do
Multiple days.
Yeah. Like, even if you're just doing like bridesmaids, bridal bouquets, and if you do like boutonnieres or some bud vases, that's a full day.
Yeah, because you get it, you prep them, you hydrate them, there's so much prep work, and then they're, at the end of the day, they're flowers, they're only beautiful for a second, and then they die, and so you're tending to them. Like, I bet your florist is working like probably 16-hour days for a few days just to get your florals to your wedding. So do it if you want to, but have really healthy expectations.
For sure.
Give yourself enough time, have some people to help, and don't put so much pressure on it being perfect, because it might not be. But that would be
That's good. That's helpful.
my thoughts on DIY florals. Okay, so those were some of your questions, and we're also just going to do some rapid fire wedding planning tips as well. And so we'll also answer some of the questions that you guys wrote in that section. So with that, Meg, what is your first rapid fire wedding tip from a wedding planner and a bride?
I would say my very first planning tip is to hire a day of coordinator. I am a day of coordinator, but it is a necessary role on a day, because there's so much that goes into a wedding day, and so many details, so many moving parts, and at the end of the day, everything falls onto somebody.
Yeah, that's
good.
And
so if you don't have a designated person to manage all the little details, then it's either going to fall on you or fall on your friends or fall on your family and be very stressful, very chaotic. And I have just watched way too many people have very chaotic, stressful days, and the bride is coordinating the wedding and overwhelmed by all the little details, and it's just not supposed to be that way. And so I would highly, highly recommend, if you can, hire a coordinator, and if it's not in the budget, train somebody up to be able to just be your point person day of, because as a bride, that is the last thing you're going to want to be doing, is having to think about the details, because it really will pull you away from being present and just enjoying the day for what it's supposed to be.
Good.
So,
wedding coordinator.
And they're like, this could be a whole other thing. The things I've seen behind the scenes at weddings that happen that brides will never know of is crazy.
Meg's wrestled mice.
I've wrestled mice. I've seen mice climb up walls. I've had to stop DJs from completely ruining weddings or messing up the timing of all the songs. I've rolled potatoes in wagons before for caterers. Like, there's so many things that have happened and I've done.
Weddings are dirty work.
Scenes. It is.
You do not want to see the behind the scenes of a wedding, because it's beautiful, but we've talked about this before. In order for there to be beauty, there has to be mess, and like, weddings are low key just some dirty dog work. Yeah. So low key also too.
You don't want to, as a bride, you also just don't want to know all the things that go wrong on your day.
No.
So
you don't want to taint the vision of it all. So.
Yeah, so that would probably be my biggest tip.
Yeah, that's good. Next one, budgeting basics. Set a budget early, account for hidden costs. Yeah, this is a big one. You need to have conversations about what you're comfortable spending. You need to be tracking your spending. You need to allocate for everything right away. Otherwise, you're going to get screwed in the last few months when you have all these little expenses come up. You need to have conversations with anybody who's contributing to your wedding financially, whether that's parents or family members, and have clear conversations about how they wish for the money to be used, if there is any contingencies to how they want the money to be used. Budgeting is everything. And we do have I think we have you have a budgeting sheet made.
Yeah.
So if you are a bride and you want our budgeting sheet, just DM us on Instagram.
I would love to send it to you because it's a lifesaver.
Yeah. So budgeting is a very important thing.
The next one is know your top 3 priorities. So this really comes back to what we were saying at the beginning about knowing your why, knowing your values, and even once you have your budget set and you know your values, pick your top 3 things. So if it's a venue or having a videographer or florals, like whatever you love the most, determine those things right away that you don't want to compromise on so that you can allocate for those things and then maybe DIY other things or give up other things later on. But if you don't prioritize it right away, you might end up being disappointed or not being able to do what you actually want to do.
So good. Our next one is just managing decision fatigue. So oftentimes with weddings, everything can feel really exhausting and people can get really tired towards the end of the process. So our best piece of advice is to our best piece of advice, like Meg said earlier, is to give yourself a few weeks or however long you need to start the decision-making process. Start when it starts to feel peaceful and try to get as many big things done as you can right away, because towards the end, as the day approaches, the last thing you need to be doing is like being stressed over silly little things. So I think it's just important to try to just eliminate some of that fatigue by doing as much as you can when you have energy. Don't procrastinate and get help where help is needed.
Yeah, that's good. Another quick tip is creating a separate wedding email. And so if you know your last name is going to be changing, just make your new email that you'll have after you're married and then use that for only wedding planning, because it keeps everything organized. All your emails going to different vendors are in one spot and nothing gets missed, and then you just have your new email already created. And so that's been a huge game changer for me to have everything separated from like my personal life right now too, and making sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
Yeah, something we don't have on our list but I think would be a good one is that like if you're planning a wedding with friends or something, making sure that if you're getting help from people, like almost setting aside allotted time to plan your wedding and not have it be the only thing that you do when you're with your friends. Which I honestly haven't experienced this personally in my life where like anyone's crossed that boundary, but I think for a lot of people it can be like the only thing that people talk about during, which is a very big thing that should be talked about. But also like you want your friendship with your friends is going to continue once your wedding is done, even when the wedding planning is like over and done with. So you don't want that to be the only thing that consumes your relationship. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to your fiance. Not spending your time only wedding planning, making sure that you have good boundaries of this is the time we're talking about wedding stuff and this is the time that we're focusing just on being friends or being fiancés. So
for sure. No, it's good because it can be all consuming and you could always have something to do or a decision to make or another thing to add. And so actually having good boundaries, time blocking is so helpful.
So good. Well, if you are watching the podcast, you can see that we may look a little different because our audio and video cut out. So this is us the next day to conclude our wedding podcast.
We had so much fun doing this one. And so we're excited for you guys to listen to it. And if you have any more wedding questions or topics or ideas, we'll probably do another episode at some point because we love talking about it. And there's just so much more to dive into. So, but that's all we have for today.
Bye, guys.
See you next week.